What happens when a local team breaks away from a national charity to build something truly rooted in their community? Jill Quinn MBE did just that, founding Dementia Forward, a charity that has grown from supporting 200 families to nearly 5,000. In this episode, we talk about what it takes to lead real change in dementia support, the urgent need for young onset dementia awareness, and why local action could be a powerful force for national impact. If you are caring for someone else, whether paid or unpaid, and no matter how many hours you do it, did you realise that you may be missing out on thousands of pounds of discounts for things that you may use every day? The Able to Care podcast is proud to be sponsored by the UK's #1 carers card. Started by two best friends who recognise that carers deserve better and are 100% committed to helping to change the lives of all carers and bringing them together as a strong community. Carers Card UK provides support, recognition and rewards. It offers reassurance by providing an ID card that helps access emergency information when needed, while also unlocking discounts, a wellbeing hub, a carers circle tool and a community through their app. All of this for less than the price of a box of chocolates a year. There are discounts on gym membership, days out, electrical goods, clothing and even glasses. Let others know you care while taking a little care of yourself with an ID card you can be proud of. Visit carerscarduk.co.uk/promo code/able to care today to order yours. Hello and welcome to the Able to Care podcast, where we explore the people, ideas and movements shaping care, support and change. I'm your host, Andy Baker, and today I'm joined by somebody who truly embodies the spirit of community-driven care. Jill Quinn is the CEO of Dementia Forward, a Yorkshire-based charity she founded in 2012 after stepping away from a national charity organisation. With a can-do approach and a powerful local model, Jill has grown the charity from a small team to one that now supports nearly 5,000 families with 69 staff and over 250 volunteers. Along the way, Dementia Forward has received national recognition, including a Nursing Times Award, a King's Fund Impact Award, and the Queen's Award for Voluntary Service. Jill herself has been awarded an MBE for her work in dementia care. In this episode, we're exploring how Dementia Forward grew, why raising awareness and education around dementia, particularly young onset dementia, is so critical, and how Jill is leading the charge for change. We'll also shine a light on some exciting campaigns, including Hat Day during Dementia Action Week and the upcoming U&ME conference for young onset dementia. So Jill, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
So starting off, Jill, it's quite an inspiring journey that you've gone from retail manager to founding a leading dementia charity. So what led you to that leap?
Some of it was an accident. But a great accident. So not to give too much detail, but retail, I was good at it, but it wasn't very fulfilling. But when I stopped to have my children, and I was fortunate enough to be a stay-at-home mum, there was no playgroup in our rural village, so I thought I'd set up a playgroup. And it was the first time I'd realised how the voluntary sector worked. I just thought it was coffee mornings and shaking tins, but there's so much more to it than that. And even with the playgroup idea, we made a huge difference. We fundraised, we got a porter cabin in, we were able to bring in 20 children who wouldn't otherwise have had access to a playgroup. So it was special. And after that, I realised there's no way I was going back to retail. So as my children grew up and I moved away from that sector, I joined a national charity, Bernardo's, working with adolescents. Loved it. However, there is a bit of a trend to the way I go about things. I think, that middle management bit is very difficult because if you have a bit of vision or you see something that you can solve, you can't always make it happen. And to be honest, that's how I felt. So there was a moment when I just had to go. So I then applied to a national dementia organisation. Worked there for a number of years, and the same thing happened. This time I had a really long list of reasons why I thought it wasn't working. And no matter how hard I shouted, I wasn't heard. So just took a gamble and left. But 6 of my team said they wanted to come with me. And so Dementia Forward was born. And it was kind of this time of year, which is why our logo is green and yellow. The DAFs were out. I think that's what inspired us. And off we sat. And it was a gamble, but it sure has paid off.
Yeah, absolutely. You're saying, you've grown significantly over the last few years. So stepping away from a national charity to start something kind of a bit more local initially, I know it's kind of growing out from there, isn't it? But it's still kind of local. What were the biggest challenges in those early days that you encountered?
I think the biggest one was identity, branding, getting that message out there. We were a tiny, tiny little speck, and to this day, and don't think I ever would, we've never paid for a national advert. And also quite hard to have a voice. We're very passionate. Dementia's a subject that grabs a hold of you, and that's what was making us strive. But there were things we needed to change, but it's really hard to have a voice. So I think it's that trying to get your head above this, and join the big boys has been the most difficult. That logo that I'm so fond of was designed by my son, who at the time was 16 and doing that at school. We were so homegrown, that was the nice side of it. But sometimes you need that professional edge to get heard and get seen. So I think that's been the hardest thing. Once we went on to get a contract, we actually won the contract from the national charity. At least we were on the pathway. So we were getting loads of referrals and we were working our socks off. But in terms of bringing in income and attracting donations and etc., that was very difficult.
Yeah. Well, you obviously, alluded to there as far as your growth is concerned. You were getting referrals initially, and you've grown Dementia Forward from 200 families initially, and now you're nearly 5,000 families you're supporting. That's quite a significant growth. What do you think has made your model so effective? What do you think at the minute is making Dementia Forward stand out?
I think, well, one is the team. I'm so blessed. And it's the one thing I always claim fame for is the success of the recruitment. So, we've got a group of like-minded people. That's very hard when you grow to what is nearly 70 staff now, to hang on to that ethos. But I think we've managed to hang on to the ethos of that small local for local approach, even though we've grown. The other thing is that I realized early on, you can't just do one, well, you could just do one bit of it. But because around us, we saw a broken system, I realized that we really needed to do the A to Z. So our service is proper wraparound. We meet people pre-diagnosis. We go right through to end of life. And we don't actually know what we're going to do for that family when we meet them. We're very responsive. We flex and change accordingly. Of course, there is structure to it. But it's that, I go back to it's that can-do approach with a team of dedicated people. There's pointless being in this if you're not passionate. You're not going to get the fulfillment, and you're not going to deliver what we're trying to achieve here.
We'll definitely dive more into kind of what Dementia Forward and all the different services and stuff like that you offer. But obviously, as a dementia charity, it's still one of those areas. There's a lot of misunderstanding, misconceptions. Why do you think raising awareness around dementia is still so important, even in 2025 that we're in now?
Yeah, no. You wouldn't think, would you? I was just looking at some of the data before I came on, and 66, I'll have to read this. I don't hold numbers very well in my head. 66,876 people died of dementia in 2023. It's the biggest thing that people die of in the country. And yet still we're having to raise awareness. I think it's so much better than when I first entered this field. Why it's important is because until we get it, and until every person connected with it, every stakeholder, every provider gets it, we're always going to have a battle. I just see it as a battle. I think families enter a battle zone when they get a diagnosis because there isn't enough knowledge and experience to want to change it. So it's frustrating, but I go back to the fact that we decided we had to do the A to Z, and the A is that raising of awareness. It's so crucial because I know we'll probably come on to young onset specifically, but if you take a subject like young onset dementia, at the moment, we're not catering for the end game. We have no proper provision in care. Well, we do, but it's really patchy. For people with young onset dementia, we haven't even got to that stage yet. So there's still a lot to do. We used to, all of us say, oh, it's like cancer used to be, and we used to say the C word, and now it's the D word. But come on, we've been at this a long time. It really is. We have to keep harping on, and not to get too political about it. But we don't even have a current dementia strategy. It's gone. So there is no national dementia strategy. Unbelievable. The biggest thing that people die of in the country, and we don't even have a strategy.
Yeah, it is. It is so strange as far as the lack of understanding, lack of support, and especially even within the NHS and things like that. All credit to the nurses and hardworking staff within it, but there does seem to still be a lack of structure, a lack of understanding around those live with dementia.
But also,
you mentioned there as well.
Sorry. Those staff must get so frustrated because they probably know some of the answers, but there aren't the places for them to send people to signpost to refer to.
Yeah, definitely. As far as what would you say still because you encounter many families who sometimes are coming pre-diagnosis, as you mentioned, as well as obviously numerous professionals you engage with as well. What would you say are still some of the biggest misconceptions that people still have about dementia?
There are many, particularly the older people who we support. I think there's still this thing about somebody's going to take my loved one away and lock them in a care home. And it doesn't have to be like that. If we can get the care right, if we can get in early enough and we can plan well, people can still live in their own community, be part of that community, and we can offer support. That's the idealistic vision. So I think there is still that fear. There is still a stigma. I don't think it's the diagnosis that you go down the pub that night and share with your mates over a beer. I still think it's quite a dramatic, and it would be, wouldn't it? It's a disease with no cure. So that's really difficult. And with cancer these days, on many occasions, there is hope. And that's a bit lacking within dementia. So for all of those reasons, really, but also just that lack of knowledge, of understanding of the illness. One of the best things we've introduced recently is not carer even, but family education, so that they can preempt and understand, and so that when they're looking at their loved one and what's going on for them, they understand what's going on inside, that it is a disease. You can separate what is grumpy grampy or what is grampy's dementia. It's about understanding the illness and being able to work with it. So lots of reason, but we're back to that awareness again, education, training.
Yeah, absolutely. Which, as you know, Jill, is one of my big areas of passion. So we're going to be working together on that. When you said, as far as the, this wraparound service that you offer, that's all the way from kind of pre-diagnosis all the way to end of life, what kind of journey and how does Dementia Forward support people through that journey at different areas? What kind of services are you able to offer that people should look out for?
When we set up, it's worth noting that when we set up, we didn't consider pre-diagnosis. So all our referrals were at diagnosis. And it wasn't COVID that forced us into this. We'd started earlier than that. It's waiting lists, and that is purely capacity. So too many people are waiting. So we now have people working in primary care. So that's where it begins. So we have memory support advisors attached to GP surgeries, and they're receiving instructions from the GP surgery for families who are floundering, perhaps they're in denial, or they're just on a waiting list, but they're already bumping into problems. So we have our memory support advisors. They're headed up by a nurse, a dementia specialist nurse, because that's where we lean a little bit into the clinical side, which is not our main work. We have a helpline. And I think this is the jewel in the crown, really, because it's a really generic helpline. You can literally ring it to say, I'm having a bad day. Or you can ring it because you've got a dementia-related question, or you want to know where to find help on something specific. And most of our referrals come through that helpline. But once you're on board, we don't let go. If you don't want to leave us, we keep you on our records right the way through. So we have chronological notes of everybody who's made contact with us, and we're dipping in and out as a team. And the next person that a person will meet, if they've been referred in, is a dementia support advisor, and that's their named worker all the way through. But if that worker's not available on a day, because of our note system, we can still support that person. It's so broad, it's impossible to tell you what they do. They will begin with, I get told off for saying this, but they will begin with the boring stuff. They will begin with looking at finances, looking at legals, power of attorney, blue badge, council tax disregard, and so it goes on. So we do that more technical, dry stuff so that you can park it. And that isn't another worry that you've got. So we encourage families to do that. Advanced care planning. Some families aren't ready. They're too emotional. They've just received a diagnosis. So we're offering emotional support. We're offering that bit of education if they want it. And because of the note system, if we can't tick the box that they've done power of attorney, we'll remind them later on. The ambition thereafter is that every family receives welfare calls. And we used to be able to do those every 3 months because we know it's progressive. It's going to rise and fall. They're going to have, sometimes they'll be absolutely fine and other times they'll need something. And those welfare calls, I always say they go something along the lines of, how are you doing? And they'll usually will say, oh, we're absolutely fine. But while you're on, and it's those while you're on questions that we can, so we're preempting, we're trying to avoid crisis. And there are many crises along the way if you're not careful. So they've got their named worker. And then we do the bit that is more of a joy, really. This is our wellbeing side of the work that we do. And we have 15 weekly pop-up cafes across the county where people can informally just drop in, do activities, get peer support, cuppa, cake. And the dementia support advisors are there. So they can informally get information and they learn from others as well. They'll be sitting maybe with a group of carers or people who are affected. And then for people a little bit further along, it is daycare. I have an aversion to the word daycare. I think it conjures up winged armchairs in dusty halls with the TV on. I don't mean to be disrespectful about that, but that is definitely the vision that I get in my head. So we call them hub clubs. So what we're saying here is you're a member of something. So we have those hub clubs now. We've just opened our 13th hub club, dotted across the county. And this is where people, the person affected can have a day of meaningful activity and the carer gets a day of respite. And we're offering over 200 places a week now at those respite hubs. We then have young onset, has a completely separate flow of work. And for them, we have outward bound day services. So those people meet, have a cuppa, plan the day, minibus and off out. We've got a beautiful county, lots to do. So, and a great part of that is that we don't go to any venue that we haven't risk assessed. And in risk assessing, we talk to the teams. And every time we do that, we offer free education. So if we're going to a bowling rink, we will offer them dementia education. So while we're doing that, we're constantly spreading the word. So we've got that, social stuff, singing groups, we play table tennis, walking. So that kind of well-being side of it. And then there's the training, education and strategy. I get the opportunity to work with the local authority, with health, to sit on boards and panels to be able to influence, because I always say, we've got thousands of case studies that tell the story proper. So we try and use those case studies to influence change. I think I've covered it, but the way I always sum it up is if it's got anything to do with dementia, we're interested and we're all over it like a rash. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's an incredibly comprehensive service. As you said, you described it as kind of a wraparound. And what was beautiful to kind of hear in that is the support both for those living with dementia and those who've got the diagnosis, but also for the families themselves. The respite, the support services, the conversations that must be so useful for them. But at the same time, there's also this service for those living the experience and having some. And I like the way that you use the term meaningful activity there, and you put an emphasis on that, because absolutely it should never just be purely arts and crafts without necessarily a purpose and meaning to them. That can be that's sometimes a lovely thing to do, but it's finding something that's meaningful for those particular individuals. And that sounds like an incredible range of services you offer. So, and we'll make sure we put details and a link to the helpline as well. We'll make sure we put that in there, because even if that's just tentatively reaching out, because is this still your experience? Maybe people are joining your service a little bit later on in their journey than maybe you'd like. Do some people miss out on that early kind of support, where they can actually, I say, the preventative side of things, the proactive things can be put in place, because they're still like, I'm sure I can handle this on my own. I'm sure I want to keep it in house. I'm still a bit ashamed of it, or stigmatized, the stigma or whatever it is. Have you encountered that a lot?
All the time. That's what we've encountered. And we encounter it less now. And back to that PR marketing bit, some of the messages we've managed to get out there, I think they have gradually had an effect on that. But it is frustrating for us when we meet a family and we know what we could have done. And a lot of that is around education, just tiny little tweaks, like if Fred can't play golf anymore, don't think, oh, well, that's the end of that then. Because now what we need to do is look at, well, what is it that Fred can do to replace his golf? So tiny little things like that. But we may meet Fred when he's retreated and he now sits and he doesn't do anything. He's given up his family care, and not out of badness. They just assumed this is the progression of the illness and it didn't have to be. So there are lots of things like that. Lots of things around nutrition, hydration, working your core so that we're not going to run into unnecessary falls. It's vast. It really is vast. So yeah, earlier is always better. And it's quite interesting that our pre-diagnosis referrals are now 40% of our caseload. And that's because of a huge waiting list. And we're in a bad area for that. So some people are waiting way over a year for a diagnosis. But what fascinates me when I look at those records is the amount of input we're having to put in, even at that stage. Mostly around emotional support, but it's just a good time to be planning and thinking ahead. And things like getting a blue badge with dementia is still hard. The assessment doesn't work for dementia, but we can be helping those people. We've got, we've fought that fight many times. We've got the precedent, we've got the letters they should use, and we can get behind that. So just simple little things that we can do in those early days.
It's vital information. I'm going through a journey with my parents who are aging, kind of trying to encourage them to get the support now before they desperately need it, but just that they're starting to need it. They're at that stage where they're making do. Yeah. And they're still struggling. They're still finding it hard, but they're just about managing to do it. It was a prime example. I spoke about the blue badge to them. And we don't have a diagnosis of dementia within that situation, but it's still just, the aging parents. My dad's mobility is decreasing. So, and he's risk of falls. So my mum was having to park outside the doctor's surgery to drop him off, to then go to a car park, then draw, but wants to be there with him to make sure he's okay getting in and stuff like that. And that's what a blue badge is for. But it just feels like, oh, well, no, we don't meet the criteria. I'm sure we wouldn't meet the criteria because they're still trying to just cope. And I'm sure there's so many families that you've met that have been fighting so hard just to cope, to stay strong.
And we don't want to leap in too early. And that's the other thing. I like the way that our teams go about this. It is about encouraging, enabling, making people resilient. We don't want to step in too early. So it's little tips and tricks without removing independence. The comparison I have is that I have unfortunately got arthritic knees. I used to run long distance, silly me. And I have one knee replacement yet. But what I didn't realise until I met the experts was I was doing exactly the opposite of what I should be doing. I should have kept moving, and I didn't. I gave up because it hurt. So I stopped. And as soon as I got moving, I made myself better. But I needed somebody to tell. I'm not silly. And yet I have this thing as well about experts for experts jobs. I meet experts. We meet experts who've got dementia who can tell us a thing or two about their expertise. But I think it's always nice if you can have somebody to talk to who really gets it, has been there, knows the detail of that. Or they will go away and they'll find out because we've got the right contacts to find the answers out.
Have you ever encountered an adult or child's behaviour that has felt difficult, overwhelming, or challenging? Have you sometimes felt at a loss of what to do, or know that you didn't handle it quite right? People are complex and unpredictable, and their behaviour can be like the weather. We've all made the mistake of looking out the window and feeling safe to wear shorts, but 5 minutes later wishing for an umbrella. But what if, like a weatherman, you understood how humidity, temperature and pressure all come together to cause the weather, allowing you to better prepare, predict and respond, and prevent ever having a picnic ruined by a thunderstorm ever again? My book, called Targeting the Positive with Behaviours that Challenge, helps you to become the weatherman of behaviour. It provides you with a toolkit to increase competency, confidence, resilience and empathy, so you feel more assured about how to respond to distressed or dysregulated behaviours in others, including those affected by trauma, mental health, neurodiversity, learning disabilities or dementia. Build better connections, achieve de-escalation and improve outcomes for yourself and those you engage with my celebrated 6-stage target model, a step-by-step process to reduce distress for everyone. Discover my empowering, person-centered guide in Targeting the Positive, written by me, Andy Baker, available from online bookstores worldwide. Find a link in the description and order today. Now, you've already mentioned it as far as you're particularly passionate around young onset dementia. What makes this group's experience so different and so often overlooked as well, do you think?
I'll do the overlooked first, and I could use a really rude word, but I won't. The data is rubbish. It's rubbish and it needs sorting. There's been a change recently that's made us look a little bit more. Dementia UK did a good piece of work and made it more realistic. But we are constantly proving that data wrong. And that's because of coding in primary care, etc. So at the moment, it's estimated there are 70,800 people with young onset in the country, and that is 7.5% of all dementia diagnoses. Well, we run a dementia specialist service for young onset, and I'm having to look at the paper again because it's numbers, and our percentage is 8.75. So they're saying 7.5, we've got 8.75. North Yorkshire published their own strategy. It's a great thing, and I'm not knocking them, but at the time, the only data they could get said 173 people in North Yorkshire, and we already had over 200 at the time on our books. We now have 450. So the data's rubbish.
Right.
So there's the first thing. So who's going to bother designing a service, designing care, if the numbers are so low, especially at times of financial issues? So there's the first thing. Let's get the data right. But the difference that it makes starts with emotions, really. I've heard so many times, well, we were encouraged to go along to that group and we walked in and it was full of 80 and 90-year-olds and we didn't belong. So there's that. But then there's the bigger stuff like having a mortgage, having young children, not young children necessarily, but teenagers, kids going off to university. There's the fact that age group are still wired to be active and independent, to plan their future, holidays, social lives, relationships. The whole thing is compounded by the fact that they are younger with a different outlook. And chances are they're going to find themselves in a system that was designed for 80 and 90-year-olds. Just doesn't work. And then the whole toolkit, of course, that we've had to learn is different. So benefits are different. That's a battle. As I said before about mortgages, that they're financially, it's a huge shock that you're going to lose one income, and also that your primary carer is going to be still at work and they've got to try and keep working to keep the family going. So yeah, nightmare. And it's just ignored. It's unbelievable. So we started the You and Me campaign in an effort to try and create change. And we were that little voice in North Yorkshire again. And this is the first time we're trying to shout nationally. And it's working at last, but it's been hard work.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit more about the You and Me campaign and also the upcoming conference that you're having at Ellen Road as well.
Yeah. So we were always going to have a campaign. We were busy talking about it when I met Jonathan Beardsworth, who was given a diagnosis of dementia. I think he was 62, and his wife, Jo. And they reached out through a friend, met them for a cuppa. I always remember that cuppa because actually I was so excited by the time I left him, I forgot to pay. So it's a standing joke between Jonathan and I that I never paid. It was a great meeting. And he became the figurehead of the You and Me campaign. Jonathan is an ex-music exec. He worked with Virgin and I always forget the name of the other one, but big musical organisations, very high up, but also a very musical chap himself. And we decided, because we needed to make a fuss, we would first of all launch a track. My sons are both singer-songwriters, so we got this track off the ground. Scott, my son, managed to get a fantastic studio down in London. Mark Knopfler of Dire Straits owns this beautiful studio. Yeah. We took Jonathan down. Jonathan plays a guitar solo, and it's his words. And his words were, some of the words were things like, I'm still me and I intend to be for keeps. And just every time he opened his mouth, he inspired us. He's a wordsmith. So that was a great way of starting the campaign. That was the beginning. We decided we would have a conference, and we decided it would be appropriate to try and have it on Jonathan's birthday. We didn't realise that how easy it is, and that nobody had ever registered a national day for young onset. So we launched the National Young Onset Day on Jonathan's birthday, and we have an annual conference all around young onset. And it's encouraging people to come. And I suppose what we're saying is, we know nobody knows a lot about this, so don't be embarrassed. Just come along. If you're involved in dementia, you need to hear this. We need to learn from each other. What a great day we've had each time. We've had 2 so far. The third one now, we've outgrown the free venue. We had a beautiful free venue, but it was a squash last year. So we're going to Ellen Road, Leeds football ground this year, 400 people. The National Day is the 24th of October, but because of complications with football fixtures and things, it will be the 14th. So the 14th of October will be our national conference. And we are starting to get that national input. And also we are delighted that Care England are supporting us. They're helping us to write a paper for government. We're getting that national throughput now, and they will support the conference and so that we get that national reach. So we're all very excited, and we've made already some big hits. We've started to influence some private care home owners who have been brave enough to start looking at what a young onset unit would look like, why it's different to older. And there's some great examples now. And that means now we can almost shame other people into saying, look, they've done it. In North Yorkshire's leading the way. What about you guys? So yeah, it's working slowly.
I know you're looking to kind of launch become a centre of excellence, essentially, as far as young onset dementia is concerned, is your ultimate aim. So what kind of role will that play in training and support for young onset dementia?
So we're back to that thing about, we've done this now since 2013, young onset, and we've got a lot of evidence, a lot of case studies, and we just felt we needed to use that to share. We know one big thing we can do is training, and that's where it's been great meeting yourself and your wonderful company. And I think it's been a meeting of minds, hasn't it? I think we're all on the same page. Well, I know we are. So that's going to be a big part of it. We had a look around and we couldn't find any young onset dementia training. So there you go. So we're working on that particular model. We have this opportunity of a beautiful building. Now, this is not all about a building. It's actually a concept, but it's easier to start, I think, if you've got somewhere to hang your hat. got this lovely building that Lavender Fields Care Village have allowed us to have. So within that building, we will operate our training from there, but we will also hopefully be opening a centre of technology. Technology aids, they haven't really caught on very well with the older community, but I think this is the chance now. There's some really clever stuff out there, and for young onset particularly, but we need to touch it and feel it. So we're hoping to set up a technology hub and training, and then all that other stuff that we do, we'll be writing it up, forming it a proper model that we can then send out to other people nationally. And then the great thing was, I can't even remember how this started, but we're working with Leeds Beckett University. They came up with the idea of this knowledge transfer partnership. It's a government scheme. It pays for a graduate to come into an industry and make a difference. And we were successful in a joint bid with Leeds Beckett University. So we will have a graduate starting June or July to head up this centre of excellence. And Leeds Beckett University, everything we do, they will measure it. They'll measure the impact. They'll do all the reporting, all the data, all the stuff that, if I'm really honest, I can't be bothered to do because I'm too busy doing the doing. So for one, we're going to do the whole thing. I mean, we do it because we have to, but we've missed so many tricks along the way. We'll have this person who will be going into Leeds Beckett once a week, taking all the beautiful information that we'll all be gathering and formulating it properly. That's the bones of it. And the rest of it will be very much like Dementia Forward, i.e. organic. We don't know yet.
Well, I'm so excited to be kind of part of it and working towards this. It does sound like an incredible project, and it's nice to hear. There's constantly little bits that I hear every time we have a conversation. You're kind of adding in and kind of talking about stuff. But it's going to be a fantastic venture, and hopefully raising awareness across the whole of the UK. And that's the thing, isn't it? This small local dementia charity making big waves because we're trying to get local people to appeal and support the local community. And if every local community did that, then we'd have a whole national kind of
Absolutely.
approach.
And we're not selling it, we're giving it away. We're on a mission.
Yeah.
That is our mission. So it's not a franchise. We're not selling anything. We just want to give it away, the model.
So as you we've mentioned a few little bits as far as all the services that you guys offer, but there seems to be this growing gap between increasing dementia diagnosis, but the availability in provisions. What do you see as the kind of key gaps currently, and what can everybody maybe do to kind of begin to close those up?
Yeah, well, if I just explain our funding structure, and therein lies a problem really. So we did set our stall out right at the beginning to be 50%, if possible, 50% contract funded, to give us the core, to give us that stability. And we've managed to achieve that. And I'm really proud of that. And year in, year out, we've managed to. But as we've grown, of course, that 50% gets bigger, which means that other 50%, which is the hard work, the fundraising, the donations, the grants and trusts bit, that's not easy. And that bit's got bigger. So what we say to statutory services is that we're a bog off. We're a buy one, get one free to any local authority. I'd like people to think about that. And the fact that our local authority gave us a 10-year contract was unheard of, but it made us who we are. It gave us that we were confident, and we did things like investing in a cloud-based system so that our staff across the county can operate well. It served us really well through COVID. So stuff like that, and also investing in your staff becomes it's just really so important. But it's worrying. It's worrying. We're all hearing the news. We're all hearing the cutbacks. So NHS, social care, they're all up against it. And we're saying, but what about our contract? It needs to grow in line with the growth in people. So actually, there's a shortage of money. So what can you do? And I think we just need to get more creative. And we're back to this awareness and training again. I think we need to help people be more resilient, be able to live in their community and feel support. So it might not be that we need to gather people and silo them into dementia services. We need to make the services that are already there accessible for people with dementia. So we've just done a piece of work, a feasibility study on leisure and fitness and sport. And the upshot of that is we're going to get into leisure centres and get in with people who deliver Pilates classes and talk to them about what they can offer people with dementia. That's one way of doing it. But the bottom line is we need more money. And without a dementia strategy, and there is no funding stream for young onset dementia, we've just got to keep campaigning. We've got to keep pushing because, sorry, I'm probably prattling on too much. There's a saving in all of this. A lot of people with young onset dementia, sectioning is almost becoming part of their pathway, and that is so wrong. So if we get it right and we invest in it, actually there's a saving further down the line. So it's about people understanding that, and we're back to educating again. So anyway, lots to do, lots of influencing, I'd say.
Yeah, it is trying to shift that, and it is a hard work sort of mentality, isn't it? Shifting over to the preventative and the kind of the putting this frameworks of support in as early as we possibly can to actually then not only provide a better quality of service, provisions, improve quality of life, but actually then it also saves money as far as the long term's concerned. But that's not always seen that way, and it's hard work getting there. But the money's got to be invested in those early stages. Which is where we'll be working together on that as well to try and get the message out. And this is what part of being the podcast is concerned, like get out there and make sure we get some links in for Dementia Forward as well. So what kind of support do you believe that smaller kind of local dementia charities need to thrive and scale their impacts? Because obviously, one thing is obviously the financials, but there is other things that people can do to support like any small charity like yourselves, isn't there?
Well, volunteering is a big thing. So we've got, I've lost count, but I know that it's over 285 volunteers. But also something I've often offered smaller charities is, do you want our volunteer handbook? Do you want our volunteer policy? Do you want us to come and train your volunteers? Because this is not, when we say volunteering, this is pretty serious stuff. Obviously, there's a range. Some people bake a cake for us for a fete, but other people are hands-on in our hub clubs, hands-on in our young onset service. So volunteering is such an asset. And that also enables the delivery of the activities to be more personal. So it's lovely when you can put an advert out and instead of it saying, would you like to volunteer? It says, are you interested in walking? Or do you like shopping? Because actually what you're doing is just attaching them to a like-minded person who happens to have dementia. So I would say that volunteering is a biggie. I think another thing is just self-belief. You don't have to be a big national charity to be the best. You really don't. And that took me a long time. In fact, I'm still not very good at it now. I've decided there is no cure for imposter syndrome. And it still creeps in. So I could say it right now. Who the heck am I sitting on a podcast preaching about dementia? But so I see some great people setting up small voluntary organisations who are doing something really, really special and they deserve support. And that's something I've learned through the King's Fund. We won that award and I had no idea the things that would follow. It's lovely. It creates, for me, that peer support network, but it encourages me to reach out to other charities. So currently I'm peer mentoring 2 smaller startup charities. And what they don't realise is they've already got it. That it's just nice to be able to reassure them that you're doing this right and look at what you're doing. Look at your achievements. Don't look at what you haven't done. Look at what you have done, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, there's all that. Just keep talking about it. It's back to the awareness again. You can't leave it alone. You've got to keep doing it. And if you did it last year, that doesn't mean you did it. You've got to go and do it again this year.
As far as it's something you said interesting there when you were talking about, and I think it was lovely what you said as far as, rather than going, do you want to volunteer or do you like walking? Do you like doing this or gardening or whatever? Because it is just connecting 2 people together. But do you think there's still quite, I don't know whether fear, maybe it's a stigma, maybe it's people not knowing that they can, that it's okay, but of working with individuals living with dementia, do you think there's still people who kind of just feel like, well, but I don't know how to care, I don't know how to manage them, or do you think have you come across that a little bit?
Yeah, there is. I think it's quite sad. There's less of this now, but it's quite sad that, for instance, on soap operas, we cover off bizarre behaviours, or I hate it when I hear the word aggression just casually associated with dementia. Because if there is aggression, it's not their fault, it's usually ours because we're getting something wrong. And it's the tiniest percentage of people. So it's a shame that the messaging around dementia is often quite negative. So the first thing is just blow that out the water. Also, it's not for everybody, but some volunteers will come to us and they'll be great at admin, or you'll notice that they want to stay in the kitchen and make the tea and cake. That's fine. It takes a team to support the whole thing. But there are those special people out there who just connect. It's not a qualification. It's not intelligence. It's just something that you can't actually put into words. And you meet them. And sometimes you meet them and they're only 18 years old. And you think, my goodness, you've got it. You are special. You ought to be in. That's another thing. Where's the careers information about dementia being a great thing to work in, or about the voluntary sector being a real place to have I wish I'd known. I wouldn't have wasted all those years in retail. So encouraging inspired youngsters into it as well. We've got some great schemes. What do they call it when they're coming from school? Work experience, placements. We do placements for OTs, for social workers, for nurses. That's a great way of spreading it as well. Yeah.
I think there is a shame, isn't there, as far as the health and social care sector generally, that sometimes it is kind of put out as it's an easy job to get. So it's always a kind of a fallback sometimes, working in social care particularly, whereas actually, and there was this big talk about making it more career driven, and it's something to kind of grow in and be amazing at, and something you should be proud of. But I think we're still a little way off that a little bit. I think there's still a little bit of, hair and beauty maybe has still got a slightly stronger pull than.
Well, and that's the same pool of people as well. I know that from our local college, that the same group of kids are sitting looking at that as another option. It's in the same room. But the other thing is, of course, the pay and the respect and the valuing of the people who do those jobs. And we've heard it talked about for years and years, and it's still being batted about. And like I said, we've got no dementia strategy now. What will this new care model look like? So we just have to keep trying, don't we? But you all have done it. You're in a room and you're training a group of people in a care home, and there'll be some stars amongst them, and there'll be others who just don't want to be there. And I know it's a bit idealistic, but if you don't want to be there, don't be there.
Yeah, and I've met some amazing people. There are some amazing carers. One of the things I find, and for places like yours are a wonderful stopgap sometimes, to come in and doing some volunteer work, and if you've cared for a loved one yourself, is continuing to do that. I think a number of your volunteers that you've come across have supported their own loved one through the journey, and then they come in to kind of continue that work on and go, hey, I learned some stuff through my time, the good, the bad and the ugly. So maybe I've got a bit of advice. And I know that you have a lot of people who come in and start volunteering once they're.
We have to insist that they take a year out. It's a bit arbitrary, but I think we kind of have to, because everybody's different, we kind of put a year on it in the hope that might be helpful. So, but they can still come along, but they don't register formally as a volunteer until a year after, if they've been caring for somebody. But yeah, they bring all sorts of skills. Yeah. And sometimes, it's about, people leave their dementia at the door. If you get the environment right, it's not about the dementia. It's often about doing a piece of woodwork or a painting or helping in the garden. It's not all about the dementia. And also you've got to stop being so risk averse in order to achieve a lot of that stuff. I shouldn't say this, but I'm touching wood, but we're 13 years in and there haven't been many disasters. Been a couple of narrow. we had a
misses.
The one for me, this is interesting. So we put table tennis into all of our hub clubs. Very popular. It's quite easy, and some people are really, really good at it. Also, there is a piece of research, something about the rhythm and the sound of the ball is quite therapeutic. I don't know about that, but I did read that. So we put table tennis in. Bear in mind, we've got table tennis. At the time, we would have had maybe 10 hubs playing table tennis. One lady, very unfortunately, and I smile when I say this, she was very sporty through her life, and she couldn't resist, even at the grand old age of nearly 90, reaching out to get that really hard shot. And over she went.
Yeah.
And sadly, she broke her hip. And I won't say who, but somebody in the statutory sector said, right, stop. No more table tennis until we've investigated. You know, all those people have played table tennis for years in all those. And even she was saying, oh, it was my stupid fault. I couldn't let it go. I should have let that ball go.
Yeah.
I couldn't let it go. Even she was saying it. She mended, bless her, and she's back. But for a whole year, we didn't do table tennis. And it made my staff nervous then because they feel this sense of responsibility. Got to stop that malarkey. Got to stop that. It's
there is a pandemic about that in general.
Yeah.
Yeah. One bad thing, that's it. The way to deal with it is to knee-jerk reaction, ban it until we can kind of, and it's there's this negativity around any risk that nobody should ever be hurt ever. And it's just life isn't fun without a bit of risk. Yeah,
no,
absolutely.
And that's that lady's attitude.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree with her. If again, when I get to my older years, I'm hoping that I'm able to still engage in many of the things I do that people would perceive as high risk and shouldn't do them. But why am I allowed to do them now? Why just when I meet a certain threshold mean I shouldn't be able to do them anymore?
Yeah.
It's
common sense, yes. But
yeah, that doesn't exist, Jill. Common sense doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Too many people don't have any. So tell us a little bit more. Obviously, we've got Dementia Action Week coming up in May, and you've put forward, so tell us about your Hat Day campaign and how people can get involved.
Yeah. It's a lovely thing, this, because it was born out of, we have an away day every year where we gather all the staff and the trustees together. And this year we put an idea out that they were in teams and they had to come up with adverts. And some adverts for attracting people to get the care they needed, other adverts to help us raise funds. And we've managed to use a few of what came out of that. They were really creative. They had a couple of hours and then they presented them on. One of them was this idea of don't keep dementia under your hat. Because it's a very visual thing, a hat. I've got a picture in my head. I really hope people commit of just, it's going to be a bonkers day. You know, like that day when it's World Book Day and you're driving along to work and you see all these kids in wacky outfits. We want it to be like that. We want it to be a sea of people wearing silly hats, fun hats, smart hats, doesn't matter. So the message is don't keep dementia under your hat. Have conversation with somebody else who's wearing a hat about your experiences and what you know about dementia. We do want to raise some money out of it. Why not? And we've got schools who've signed up to do it, which is fabulous, a bit like non-uniform day. We're doing school assemblies. We've got our memory support advisors are going to hang around in doctor's surgeries wearing hats. So, yeah, it's just going to be a bonkers day all around hats.
Well, Jill, thank you so much for sharing, your story, but also your vision and your journey. I know that you've got some amazingly exciting things coming up with the conference in October, and as well as obviously just even simple things like the Hat Day and working towards a centre of excellence and the hubs that you're doing as well. I'm definitely very excited to kind of be working with Dementia Forward and Able Training and Dementia Forward working together to hopefully, as you've mentioned a few times, raise that awareness and get more people talking about it, but also really understanding, stepping away from some of the kind of the assumptions and the misunderstandings and stuff like that to have a much better engagement involvement with those in the community. So yeah, thank you so much for spending some time with us today. Is there anything you wanted to kind of finish off with or you wanted to mention that we haven't mentioned already?
No, I think we've done a good job of that. And thank you for the opportunity. Brilliant.
So if anybody listening has enjoyed anything we've been speaking about, then please make a comment, reach out, find the details for Dementia Forward in the show notes. the helpline, as well as how you can get in contact, potentially offer any support, or just help us raise awareness as well. And watch this space. There'll be more about able training and Dementia Forward in the future. But otherwise, thank you very much. Thank you, Jill.